Hey there, welcome back. I am in Tilichiki, Russia, in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. My call sign is Lazy. My username is PixelLazy, and my plane is the Pixel. And we are flying around the world in Microsoft Flight Simulator, and this is, wow, it's like the 19th leg of this trip. And we left from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, almost a month ago. And I am getting ready to take off from a little grass landing strip in Tilichiki Airport in northern Russia. And we're headed south today, down towards another little airport. I don't know if it's attached to a town or what. I'll look that up as we're flying. I'm going to go to this place called Yuka in Russia as we head down on our approach down to Asia. It's like a beautiful late morning, early afternoon. I don't know, I didn't even look at the time. It's Friday evening where I am, hanging out. It's the weekend. And we're gonna do some flying here. This little island community, it looks like, at the end of the airport. Doesn't like how low I'm climbing, but I wanted to have a look down below and see what's going on.
Tilichiki Center, Lazy Lima 118 is type Cessna Skylark, 1 mile south of Uniform Hotel Papa Tango.
Our flight today is just under 200 nautical miles, and we kind of go down the coast of this peninsula in northern Russia, and we should be in sight of land most of the way, over land for some of it, and looks like we'll get some good scenery. So I'll check in when I get a little altitude and I get a little closer. So about 30 minutes into the flight at this point. Tilichiki is way back there, past the tip of my tail. Starting to head into a little bit of weather. I noticed this when I plotted my course, that there was a bit of a swirling storm, and I've been fighting a headwind. It's not as bad as it was. It was up at 20 knots northbound, and now it's around 17, 16. But it's been pushing me off course a little bit. As you can tell, I'm kind of going at somewhere between 230, 240 degrees. I'm supposed to be on somewhere between 220 and 230. So about 10 degrees off course, and I'm just fighting that, and that's the wind pushing against me as I fly into it. And it looks like there's some interesting cloud formations way up ahead, just past that little island. A little ways beyond that, there's a bigger island. So this one little island you can see just past my nose is, according to the map, is just this little hop island in between, about halfway between. There's a big island that takes up about probably a quarter of my flight distance. It's probably 50 miles long, I would guess. Off to the west, I guess, that is quite a mountain range that goes down the middle of the peninsula. It's not this one up close. That's just a little mini chunk of land that protrudes out from the peninsula, but way up, kind of at the horizon, sort of make out the mountain range, and that's sort of the center of this peninsula that I'm flying down. And then off to the east is the Bering Sea. Kind of interested to see what kind of weather I hit as I get a little further in. If it's going to impact my flight at all. I'm trying to lose some altitude. I was up almost 6,000 feet for a bit, and dropping down, maybe get down to about 4,000. But as I keep flying along, I'm heading south towards the tip of this peninsula, which turns into kind of a string of pearl-like islands that kind of extend down into Japan. So I'll be couple more flights in Russia, and then heading down towards Japan, which is, you know, it's almost prescient, I guess, because yesterday Microsoft Flight Simulator announced that their first big update for the landscape is coming out on the 29th, which is next week, mid next week. And I should be in Japan in about a week or two, and their first big landscape update is Japan. So they added a whole bunch of new airports, enhanced some of the scenery around there, so I'm going to be getting down there just about maybe a week or two after they've updated the whole landscape there, so that's pretty interesting. And as I get closer to these clouds, I might be hitting some weather here soon, so I'll check in maybe when I get a little closer to that. We're a little over halfway to our destination now. Yeah, I hit that cloud bank, and that was it was pretty low. It was sitting around 2,500 feet, and so I dropped some elevation and scooted in beside this island that's off to the east here. The wind is still kept up, so I'm having to be pretty vigilant in my course adjustments, but even so, I'm probably 5 miles to the east of my plotted course, on my way to Yuka Airport. Did some Googling while I've been in between moments of, you know, making sure I don't veer off at a 90-degree angle to my course in the wind here, and I googled Yuka, and not much comes up. There was a short Wikipedia article about it being used as sort of a refueling base during the Second World War, back when the United States and Russia were, I guess it would have been USSR, were allies during the Second World War, and they would send airplanes over to Siberia, and Yuka was a kind of a military refueling base. There was a town there that was disbanded in the 70s because everybody moved away. So I don't know if we'll see any buildings or any structures around there, maybe just an airport. I don't know if the airport is still maintained, but it's an active airport in the simulator, so we're going to land there probably in about 45 minutes, and we'll see what there is to see. I was kind of hoping the sky would clear up a little bit. If I was looking off this way, you could kind of see the land off to the side there. We're kind of in a little bit of a strait here. That's an island. The island goes, probably 10 miles just past that ridge of mountains there. It drops back into the ocean, and then way off on the other side of the water there is the main part of the peninsula that we're flying down. And that peninsula is, I keep calling it a peninsula, but it's, technically that's what it is, I guess, but it's, according to the map, it's roughly the size of the province that I live in Alberta, Canada, and extending downward from Russia. So we're scooting along the eastern side of that as we head down towards that chain of islands that's going to connect us to Japan. So I'll keep going. Hopefully the weather clears. Hopefully we get a little bit more scenery. But once we get past this island off to the left, we're out in the open sea for a while. We should be able to see a little bit of land off to the right side there as we get closer and closer, and it scoops down and we land into the bottom of the scoop there. I'm going to try and maintain a pretty low altitude just to stay below these clouds and keep fighting the wind, I guess. I had to drop in here for a minute because I've been listening to an audiobook as I've been flying. It's actually a one of the great courses on Audible, and this isn't an ad for Audible, by the way. I don't do sponsorships, but I've been listening to an audiobook. It's a lecture on mind-body philosophy, which for most of you is probably terribly boring, and I'm sitting here flying a flight simulator listening to philosophy lectures. But there was a segment where they were talking about mind-body philosophy and how neurons sort of can form sort of a quasi-mind and learn, and they were talking about an experiment where a researcher used a few rat neurons connected to a computer interface to learn how to fly a flight simulator. And so it took about 15 minutes for just a gob of rat neurons in a petri dish, essentially. I'm sure it was more complex than that, but to be connected to a flight simulator to learn how to fly it. So now I'm going to look that up and read more about it. But as I'm sitting here thinking that I'm an ace pilot in Microsoft Flight Simulator, it's funny to think that all you really need is a petri dish full of rat brain, and they could probably do just as well as I am right now. So, something to think about. As I keep trucking closer to my destination, trying to maintain about the same altitude. I'm about 20 minutes out of my landing. So there you go. Just got my first contact in a while.
133.8 for Lazy Lima 118. Camp Chats Center, Lazy Lima 118 2000.
Great timing.
Lazy Lima 118 Camp Chats Center, continue as planned. Altimeter 30.19er.
You can see straight ahead there's a mountain. What I've discovered, actually, in doing some research, is that all down this peninsula is a mountain range, but it's kind of punctuated on the south end by a series of volcanoes, from what I understand. I don't know if they're dormant or active. There's a few pictures of a few of them that they've got billowing smoke plumes coming out of the top. I doubt I'll see that in Flight Simulator, obviously, but so what I did here was I kind of did a veer off on my course, and I've been kind of maintaining about a 240 degree rather than my course of 220 something, and so I'm about 15-20 degrees off course, just kind of heading in the right direction, probably adding about 5 or 10 minutes onto my flight overall, but I'm going to swoop by this first volcano and then plan my trip down the rest of this peninsula, probably in 2 or 3 more flights, to kind of swing by some of those volcanoes and see what they look like. I assume, because I'm headed towards Japan, and Japan is sort of a big volcanic island, I think. I'm not sure, maybe somebody can correct me. I don't know my geography that well, but I'm assuming something like Mount Fuji is part of a mountain chain, and I think if you were to kind of trace up, this would probably be along a similar chain of mountains as Mount Fuji. Mount Fuji is probably like 400 miles, 500 miles south of here, but, you know, mountain ranges are big, so we'll see. Yeah, interested in checking that out. This is so remote. While I was flying through Alberta, Alaska, I would often see other players, because I'm playing on multiplayer here. I would often see other players around, you know, even if they were 100 miles in the distance, their little name badges show up on the screen. It has probably been 2 or 3 flights since I've seen another player. I am in the middle of nowhere here. I mean, don't tell the Russians that. This is beautiful remote Russia, I'm sure. Wonderful. If you could get up here, it's probably, you know, a dream for backpacking and camping and just being in nature. I don't even know what you'd see up here. but would love to go here in real life. It's highly unlikely, but even in Flight Simulator, this is the middle of nowhere. There are thousands of people playing. Yeah, so again, it says I'm about 15 minutes out of my destination. I'm gonna get a little closer to this volcano, do a little swoop around, and then probably head in for a landing. So the airport we're headed to is down just at the tips of those lakes that you see off on the screen there, on the left of my wing. See that mountain range extending that sort of cuts this little peninsula down the center, maybe a little more than the center, and then this volcano, if that's what it is, was kind of sitting out there in the middle, and as we fly south, which I will turn south now, south is going to be our direction as we head keep heading to the south end of Russia to jump over to Japan. And I'm going to get ready to land here because I am about 10 miles out, and I will probably cut out and rejoin you when I'm a little closer. But these little lone volcanoes protruding out of the peninsula are something that there's at least 5 or 6 of them that I'm going to have to zoom around and see. There's another one off to the side over there. Remember, I don't know if you've been listening, but this little chunk of land dipped down and sort of did a little cup down here, a little loop around. You can see the coastline sort of turn around, and then kind of sitting out in the middle of the water there is another volcano, and then it continues south from there. So yeah, we're just about to land here, and I will check in a couple minutes, but I just wanted to point out that volcano as we return to some interesting landscapes as we just finished flying over this strait. And I'll be back. So one of my viewers asked if I would show you where I've been. So I'm doing a little interjection into this video just to give you a map of where this trip's gone. Maybe I'll do that every 10 videos or so, give you an overview of my flight. So I started in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. So if you zoom out, there's Canada, states down here, BC. Started in Edmonton, flew out along this highway here down to Jasper. When I took off from Jasper, I flew down along the mountains here, wound up in Golden, BC, right over here. Flew across over to Kelowna, continued over to this Boston bar where I flew down the highway here and along into Vancouver. Across onto the island, there's Nanaimo, which if you watched an earlier video, it's probably like my 5th flight. Tofino, then up to the north end of the island up here, Port Hardy I think it was. Having trouble remembering some of these places. Then up the coast of British Columbia into somewhere up here. Or maybe it was, yeah, it's tough to remember. It was up in one of these areas. Eventually made it into Alaska. That little line is what denotes Alaska. Followed the Alaskan coast. Didn't stop at Juneau, but I went through this glacier bay. There was a video where we looked for glaciers. Flew up over Yucatan is where I landed. Over to Anchorage. Then took a couple flights to fly up across this area here. Hit Nome. When I was in Nome, that was my last flight in North America, and then jumped right across the bay here. There's that little triangle chunk of land. If you remember watching that video, I flew over that. Landed in this bay here. Then up across, around, over to somewhere over here, I remember. It's tough remembering, but yeah, it was somewhere over in northern Russia here. So you see we're way up here. I thought it was Siberia, but this is Siberia. This is northern Russia, I guess. And then up to somewhere up in the middle here, Oh no, right there, Markovo. So we jumped across to Markovo, and then we followed down to, there's Tilichiki. One of the Tilichikis was by one of these places, and then the other Tilichiki. And then today we are flying down, and this is right where we're landing. So you see this volcano we just flew by, was that. And this is the airport we're going to land at, Yucca. So to give you an idea, oops, didn't do what I wanted to do. We flew there, across, up, over, down, over, and then down, and we're somewhere right over here. And we're headed down this way to Japan, and you see there's a string of islands down here. So that's what I've been talking about. But yeah, we're in the middle of this little peninsula here, right there. That's where we're ending the video today. So hopefully that clears things up of where I'm going. And as you can see, it's a big world, long way to go, but I have kind of covered that, and that is 19 flights to get there, and about 40 hours worth of flying, real time. So back to the flight. We're back, and we're about 3.5 miles out of the airport here. I don't know if we're going to get flight clearance to land, or if it's just one of those, another one of those like just tell them where you're going to go and land. Obviously, this is not a high traffic airport, so I'm not exactly sure how Flight Simulator works. Some of those high traffic airports are giving me clearance to land and yell at me when I went on the wrong runway. But ever since I got up out of northern BC and into Alaska and Russia, it's sort of, yeah, just land, just tell you where, I just kind of tell you where I'm going. And I don't think I've changed any settings or anything. So what I'm going to be looking for is clearance to land, probably on runway in the high teens, low 20s, 18 maybe. I think I'm coming straight on to this this airport here. Trying to slowly lose some altitude as I approach. And yeah, so again, thanks for flying with me today. If you've been watching these videos, I know a handful of people have been faithfully checking in and following along. They are pretty long videos, but you know, I'm trying to document this trip. I want it to be legit, that I'm, you know, logging this trip around the world. And there is, you know, honestly, to get from, I live in the middle of nowhere, and then crossing the middle of nowhere, but then getting to somewhere, you know, when I get over to Asia and all down through there into Australia and eventually up through, you know, all those other interesting countries which I've never been to. Those are going to be, I hope by then I've got a little bit of a viewership who appreciates everything and can check in. I'm doing a pretty poor job of updating my website, but I've got that on my list of things to do this weekend, is update my flight logs there. But I have been posting these videos as much as I can, and yeah, I haven't crashed yet.
Uniform Oscar Sierra Oscar traffic Lazy Lima 1181 miles north 100 feet inbound to land runway 36.
Didn't want me to land there. Swoop around and do the other way. I don't know if I think I've mentioned this a few times, but when I was in university, I got a summer job at an airport near the city where my parents live, and I was cutting grass around the runways. Somebody's got to do that. And in order to drive anything around a runway, you have to take a course, test at least, and learn how to talk to air traffic control and ground control, more specifically ground control. The airport where I was, it was basically the same thing, just a different channel. And so I drove around with a radio, and I don't remember much of that, but one of the things I do remember was how they number runways. And I've mentioned this before, in that when you number a runway, just so you can tell where you're going, you basically take the compass and you drop the last digit. So if I was to land on that runway that I did, that was runway 18, because the compass direction was 180 degrees, so runway 18. So it told me to land on runway 36, which means since there's no zero, they loop around, and 360 degrees is exactly opposite of 18 degrees. Or 180 degrees, I guess. But runway 36 is that coming in from that other direction. So I get to take a little bit of a swooping loop around here and not stall out, because I was just about ready to land. Like I said, I don't know why it picks what it picks. I assume it has a lot to do with wind direction. As I said, there was a nice northbound or north wind that I've been facing, headwind the whole way, and I think ideally you want to land with the wind at your tail. And not do that. My camera is not cooperating. Hit the wrong button there. Hopefully I didn't make anybody airsick.
500.
Uniform Oscar, Sierra Oscar traffic, Lazy Lima 118 is on final runway 36 to land.
Yeah, so there you go, runway 36. You look up at my compass, I'm at 350 something, which is close enough, approximately 360 degrees. Drop the last digit, runway 36. Dead stick this one. It's a nice long runway. Like I said, this was an old military airport. And again, thanks for watching. Another long video in Russia. A little bit of a rough landing there, but we will head to the taxi, and yeah, thanks for watching. Welcome to Yuka, Russia.